is when you can't feel the way you actually genuinely are trying to feel about certain situations that can be dangerous and it can be a threat to life. You know, when people are in experiences and they can't feel a certain way, you know, they can't feel concerned, they can't feel that panic of, oh yeah, I need to do this, I need to do that. We can't just easily really feed into it because of what life is, how life is. You know, if a person go missing, do they got their phone? Oh, okay, no big deal. You know, if you think about everything outside of what's going on, do they friends know? Do this person know? You know, I just heard this person and he was conversing with another person not too long ago. How we know that this person she didn't call this person, or this person didn't make a call, and then in the midst of them being missing, they could have just, you know, called out to somebody else without us knowing. So now this makes it okay for that person to be missing. You know, we can't really tap into the feeling of, oh, I'm so concerned. Oh yeah, this person's missing. Oh, this person, something may have bad happened to this person. We can't really be concerned because we know that in our case, or if we just reverted back to our own experiences, what will we do? You know, and if we know ourselves, then we know this person, unless this person is a stranger to you. The fact that we know ourselves and we know this person, we can't really see the help sign. You know, that help sign can be held up like, I need help. You know, it's right there. It's obvious. This person needs help. But if this person is in denial of what they actually need, then how can they be helped? Just like I said before, that one phrase, just that one statement, that I don't know if it's a quote or something. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. The fact that they aren't drinking, do they know what's best for them? There was this one time, me and my sister was sitting on the couch. It was late, and we heard a scream. We like, did you just hear that scream? She's like, yeah, I just heard that scream. I'm like, dang, I know how it feels when that person is saying, you know, they didn't do nothing, but they heard me scream. You know, the question is, why didn't they do nothing? The question is not that they didn't want to help. It's the fact that they wasn't in a position to help. You know, we can hear a scream, but oh yeah, this person can be playing, this person can be joking, this person probably ain't even serious. You know, we so stuck in this way of thinking. Even if we got up to look out the window, we still don't see where the scream came from. So how can we help if we don't know? That's what I told her in that moment. I'm like, dang, I know how it feels, you know, to think that these people didn't want to help you. But could they actually help? That scream was like, ah. That's exactly how the scream went. It was like, ah. I'm like, did you hear that? She's like, yeah, I heard that. But we couldn't do nothing about it. You know, it's too dark for one. It's nighttime. You look out the window, you really can't see anyone. Did I budge? I really didn't. But it's not because I didn't want to. It's because we got our own issues. You know, we going through something. That scream out the window could have been, you know, a reflective moment of what's actually going on inside, and you hear it outside. You know, being in these situations is hard. I know there's help that's needed out there. There's help that's needed here. What can you really do when you all need help all at once? So yeah, I actually wanted to talk about something as well. I actually don't know where to start. I guess I'll start with a conversation that me and my brother had that actually rung a bell in my life, and it just like means so much to me. And at first I'm like, wow, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it, you know, because it made a lot of sense. So we was having a conversation, and what he said is just like, wow. Okay, so hold on. I can't find it. Okay, so he said sometimes you have to allow, here we go. You just have to sit in your happy place and allow the static to be. Allow the static in life, you know. When it comes to the static of life, it's kind of like, you know, that noise, you know, to filter out what's not meant for you. You know, if it's, and that's crazy because I had made this video. And it was another video while I was in a parking lot of the hospital, and I spoke more after a call. And this video had a radio static on it. You know, you couldn't even hear my voice. It was a static. I'm like, wow. Obviously, that message wasn't meant to be, and it needed more clarity to the situation. You know, when you want these situations like this can be happening over here, this can be happening over here, and you just don't know where to go. You don't know which way to turn to. They both kind of making sense. Sometimes God is that static. God is that static, that noise to push you away from that situation. You know, it may look good, it may seem good, but there's something here that needs to be done. There's something here that needs to be done. And in order for you to get you to step away from that situation, while everything takes place, that static is there's going to be a sound you just can't understand. You know, what happens when static is happening? You know, you on a radio station, you listen to a song, and all of a sudden there's static, and you're like, dang, I really like that song. You try to fix it a little bit. You try to move the antenna around, trying to get a signal. That's crazy. I just had a dream about the antenna. So you try to move the antenna around. You try to get a signal. You try as best as you can, but you know, it's not giving. So you have to go to another station. You have no other choice but to turn to another song. And that's what this means. And I'm like, wow, I like the sound of that. You know, the fact that you just said you have to allow that static. Just let the static be. And in the meantime, he said, you know, just sit in whatever makes you happy. Sit in that joy. You know, continue living your life. Continue doing what you got to do. Continue basking in that feeling of you. You know, when something over here and something over here, sit in what helps you. Sit in that moment. Sit in that feeling. You know, he took me to that happy place. You know, we was talking and the conversation just put me back into a happy place in my mind. You know, that idea. That, you know, whatever idea you have, you know, people have dreams. They have these dreams and they manifest these dreams because intuitively, you know what you want. You know what makes you happy. So he took me back into that place and everything was gone. And while everything is gone, I'm not worried about what's missing. I'm not worried about what's going wrong. I'm not worried about what's happening because that's what I'm allowing. You know, I'm allowing. God is putting his hands on those situations. And I just have to sit and step away and just allow, you know. To let go and let God, because God did that for a reason. God made this happen. God is working on it, you know, and you just got to trust the process. In the midst of you trusting, don't focus too much about what's happening. Go to that place that makes you happy and know that whatever happens will happen. And this leads me back to, so I was looking at this article and it kind of goes along with what I'm talking about, in a way, if I can find it though. It's from Luminosity. It's just like a site that just kind of just opens you up every now and then. And it says, hearing goes beyond the ears, goes beyond the ear. And this is the article that I'm reading. Your ears don't work alone. Cognitive processing shapes how and what we hear. After sound waves travel through the ear canal, tiny hair cells in the cochlea, I think I said it right, cochlea, C-O-C-H-L-E-A, convert vibrations to electrical signals sent to the brain. The brain then does a lot of work to identify relevant sounds and filter out background noise. That part right there, you know, our brain does the work of filtering out background noises. And when I was talking about this, I was having a conversation. I was like, wow, like if we really think about it, a lot of the stuff that we make, like headphones, earphones, our brain does exactly. It's just an imitation of who we are. Our mind have the ability to do the same thing, but we don't even allow that chance. We don't allow ourselves to see what we are capable, what is in our ability, what our abilities can do for us, because we're so busy creating other things to do exactly what we can do or what our mind has the potential to do. But, you know, we don't have that patience. Older adults sometimes say, I can hear you, I just can't understand you. This may not be about hearing loss, but about the brain's declining ability to efficiently process language and distinguish it from other noises. So it's like, I hear you, but I can't understand you because I have so much noise going on already of my mind. You know, when you're in a situation and this person is talking to you, you really want to tune in to what they're saying, but you can't tune in because it's too much of, you know, noise inside your mind already. So it's like, you know, that's basically kind of what they're talking about, that background noise is the background noise, you know, but our mind has the ability to distinguish that background noise, to filter it out, you know, sometimes. And this is what it is. You know, have you ever been in a situation where you're sitting there, you laying down, you know, you laying down or you doing what you got to do. You could be working, you know, you're on a certain shift. You just had a conversation, so you go back to what you was doing. Let's say you was cleaning the kitchen, you straightening up the chairs, you wiping the tables. So you go back to what you're doing after that conversation. As you wiping this table, you just thinking about that conversation. It's taking a long time to digest everything that was said, but eventually the noise dies down. And you're like, okay, you got a silent mind, you got a sound mind. And that means, you know, your mind has just reduced that noise, had filter out whatever didn't serve you. You know, that's what God is doing in your life. God is filtering out what doesn't serve you. So distinguish it from other noises, reducing background noise and asking company to speak slowly can often help in these situations. You know, and that's another thing. Like, you can't just sit there and tell them, you know, that's you straining too much though. You straining yourself to listen to them. But honestly, you still got a lot going on with you. The fact that you can't really hear or comprehend what's going on, it just means that you need to be taken away from that situation. And then eventually later on, if it doesn't come back to you, once your mind has done, once God has done what he has done in your life, if it doesn't come back to you, it's not for you. You know, and that's what God is doing. So they say more research is needed to fully understand how hearing loss and cognition are interconnected, but more learning in this space stand to offer better interventions as well as more nuanced insights into how our perception of sound operates. Perhaps with these findings, we can one day offer games to support the hearing. In the meantime, stick with us if you want to train your memory. Okay, so yeah, that's my spiritual insight on that. But as well as, like I said, you know, sometimes we have, you know, the brain is just, like I said, the brain can do exactly what we out here trying to do with other stuff. You know, we just got to trust ourselves enough. We got to just sit with ourselves, pay attention to ourselves. Our health matters, you know, and we got to just believe in ourselves as much as we believe in these headphones, you know, to reduce the noise. You know, a lot of people walking around, you know, it's a lot of people sitting on the bus or walking around in the streets and they got these headphones in, muffling out the sound. But you can do just that. Take off them headphones and try to do it for yourself. You know, sometimes the noise can be too much, but the fact that you're trying to muffle it out with something that's outside of you, that's out of your control. Even if you're trying to have control of the situation, you put these headphones on, you think you're controlling the situation when you're really not. You could be hurting your own ability to hear, you know. So some situations just, it makes you need to tap more into the environment. Just like, you know, there's a lot of people that's working and they need that music. They need that music to, like, I had another conversation with somebody. He really needs his music to really listen, to motivate him, to inspire him, to, you know, give him that determination. He focuses on, the instruments help him, with his job. So I'm just like, what if those instruments, or what if that music or those headphones, you know, you wasn't allowed to have those on the job? What would you do then? You know, when they say, you know, they may not even mean it, you know, they may not even know what they like, you know what, we gotta, you're not allowed to have headphones anymore. You can't listen to music on the job anymore. You know, what if that was taken away from you? This is only preparation, because, and it's also a meaning, you know, this could be helping you, separating you from, that music, because, you know, sometimes you just gotta embrace your own frequency. You know, you have to be in tune. That's what I learned when I was working. You know, I was working, I was cleaning, and eventually it wasn't demanded. I could listen to music, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stop listening to music on a job. I'm gonna just go ahead and do my job without any music. I'm gonna just do it. You know, and, you know, I did it, and I became more aware of my environment. You know, I became more present in the moment, regardless if I'm doing a job or not. I'm there now, you know, and this is just training my brain, training my mind, working on myself. That's you working on yourself when you don't depend on outside stuff to help you internally. You know, if you really like the job, you'll know if you like the job. Turn off that music and see if you can still do that job without listening to that song. Then you're gonna know, oh yeah, I can last at this job. But if you keep your music going, and that, allowing that to be the inspiration and allowing that to be the reason, then how will you ever know? If you can turn off that music and continue on with the job, but then you feel kind of just like, you know, you just know when you turn off the music. You'll just know when you turn off the music. But yeah, so y'all need to try that. But I'm not comparing it to his, like, something that he needs to do, because he does have a hearing problem. You know, he can't, he grew up with a hearing problem, so that helps him. But for other people that doesn't have that, or doesn't have that same, you know, experience, don't have that ear problem, and you're, you know, I can't really get out what I was trying to say for you. But yeah, for those of you that doesn't have that problem, you know, do what you got to do. Tap into yourself, stay focused, and see what your potential gives, you know. So yeah, I think I said all that I wanted to say. A bunch of mixed messages in here. It's not really direct, but that's my perspective, you know, of the static, you know, that's static. So yeah, it's all about the static, but it's just different resources that I had to kind of just give you some type of to help you, you know, as well as help myself. So yeah. With that being said, y'all, like, comment, subscribe, be notified, share at your own free will to show you care. And yeah, I'll talk to you next time.